Welcome to NH classes. My name is Susil and today we are going to discuss about Palo Alto PCNSE syllabus. So let's get started. In this syllabus, we are going to cover all those topics which are related to your examination, PCNSE examination. So we are going to deal with the PCNSE examination domains like planning and core concepts, deploy and configure firewalls using Panorama, manage and operate, and troubleshooting. These are the core areas from where they'll ask you the questions in examination. Now you can see the percentage wise also, what percent of questions will come from the particular area. So from the planning and core concepts, they'll ask you 90% in the examination. Deploy and configuration, they'll ask you 32%. From firewall and Panorama, they'll ask you 13%. Manage and operate 16%, and troubleshooting 20%. So that's how we have designed our course. So if you do course from Networker Zone or NH classes, definitely will be clearing all these concepts regarding to your firewall and the Panorama and troubleshooting etc. Now, overall, if you see, these are the firewall individual examinations like EDU 210, EDU 220, and we have firewall troubleshooting 330 or the threat prevention EDU 214. So these are the separate 4 papers. If you are separately taking a training of all these papers, so you have to pay or you have to, learn all these things separately. But if you guys are going for PCNSE domain, PCNSE examination, you will have all these topics inside the PCNSE itself. So almost from all these 4 examination papers, we have selected the topics which will be according to your PCNSE examination, and as per the percent wise, we'll be training you guys on this PCNSE examination. Now let's see the topic wise, what are the topics that we are going to cover. So if you see the first topic, that's your core concept. In the core concept, we are going to understand about, you can see here, like the first thing we'll talk about is platform and architecture. So in this, we'll discuss about what are the different types of hardwares, software model numbers, their specifications, right, and their architecture. So architecture basically helps you to understand the flow of your data, right? What is the design? How many types of CPUs are given? Like Palo Alto follows the SP3 architecture. So what is the SP3 architecture, right? So it's a single path parallel process, right? So parallel process or pass, both you can say. It's the SP3 architecture of your Palo Alto firewall. So we are going to start right from the scratch and make you guys understand the PCNSE course. So let's say if you don't have any knowledge on the Palo Alto firewall, and for the first time, if you want to appear for the Palo Alto firewall, is that fine? Are you eligible to do PCNSE? Well, you can do that. So our course is designed in such a way so that we can train you from a beginning, from the scratch till PCNSE expert we can make you. Okay. So in before PCNSE, we have PCNSE certification as well. But I don't recommend you guys to do PCNSE certification. Directly you can go for PCNSE, though there is no prerequisite. Okay. So the concepts what I'll be teaching you here will cover all those PCNSE topic and the PCNSE topics according to your examination perspective. So you'll get full visibility on the PCNSE part. So this time our motto is to have registered or the licensed firewalls will be using for the training. Okay. In which we'll see again Panorama deployment and the deployments through the Panorama to the firewalls. Such type of trainings we'll be doing this time. Now, more about, you'll see about the packet flow, key features and specification, key security components, firewall components, Panorama, the components, right? PanOS, AI details. These are the core concepts that we are going to discuss. Along with that, we'll see the types of interfaces. There are major type of interfaces in the Palo Alto firewall. I mean, different types of interfaces we have, like layer 2 interface, layer 3 interface, right? So we can make a Palo Alto firewall interface to work like a layer 2, like a switch. It's an individual configuration of the interface that we can do. We can make it like layer 3, or we can configure it as a virtual wire. See, virtual wire is like a transparent firewall configuration. So we are going to see practically all of these things. You can configure into a sub interfaces, right? Tap interface, sub interfaces, tunnel interfaces, loopback interfaces. So different types of interfaces we have inside the Palo Alto firewall, right? So we are going to deal with all these core concepts. Now, these are the concepts from where you understand the basics of your firewall. So once you have a base fundamental knowledge of the firewall, from there you guys can explore about the other level of the concept on the Palo Alto firewall. Okay. So hereafter, again, you can see the core concepts that we'll be discussing about the risk management. We'll see enabling the decryption use case, decryption types, right? Decryption profiles and certificates. So how do we use certificate to do a decryption on the firewall? By default, there won't be a decryption policy or decryption feature won't be enabled on the firewall. So how would you apply the decryption feature? How would you enable a certificate? How would you download? How would you install it in a PC, right? All those things from the scratch, we are going to show you guys with the practical. Even how to build a lab, we are going to show you from the practical itself. And from our side, we'll be providing you all the devices, right, that you can use for your practical. We'll provide you RDP access. Through the RDP access, you can take the remote lab of our organization, right? And you can do all the practicals with the licensed devices. Okay. Now, we'll see how to do a user-based authentication, right? So how do you do a mapping with the user to IP address? So user-based authentication, right? So you'll have a captive portal, right? So how would you create a captive portal and how would you do the user authentication, right? User-based authentications. So for user-based authentications, we have different types. Like we can go with a user agent-based authentication, or it can be agentless, right? It can be either user ID agent or it can be agentless. So basically you have three methods, right? So one method can be like local method. So you can use first method as a local method, right? So using a local authentication, right? This can be your local method. After that, you guys can use the agentless, right? Or you can use agent. So three methods of doing the user authentication you can see, right? So how would you use the user authentication in the redistribution like layer 3, layer 2, right? Or how would you use in a group mapping? So how would you create a group for the users, right? And how would you manage the users inside the group? How would you, configure all these things for the authentication profile and all? So very minutely, we are going to see all these mappings and the configurations on our Palo Alto firewall. Now, hereafter, we'll see the authentication policies, like how would you create the authentication policy. So along with this user part, you also have to call the user profile into the authentication policy, right? And you have to configure the captive portal. So captive portal is a kind of a web page, right, wherein you guys can use it for the authentication. So let's say, for example, if a user wants to get access for the network, first of all, it has to authenticate itself. It has to verify itself, right? That is basically called as an user-based authentication, right? So through the captive portal, we'll see how do we do the user-based authentication, right? Now, let's see the next label, next concept. Now, here we have deploy and configure core components. Now, from here, you guys are going to get 20% of the, 20% of the marks, right? Here you will see about the interface management profile. Interface management profile deals with like how would you enable the services at the interface, right? Let's say at the firewall interface, if I have to enable like data interfaces, if you want to enable the services, right? Like ICMP service or Telnet service or SSL service or HTTPS service, anything that you want to enable manually. So that can be done through interface management profile and also service related to SSL or TLS we are going to see. Now, hereafter you will see deploy and configuration or configure security profiles. So these are the security profiles, guys. Security profiles in the sense you can say content filtering. These are the content filtering areas, right? So these areas will deal with your content filtering. So in a content filtering, we have different types of profiles. Like we have 8 types of profile in content filtering, right? Like we have anti-spyware filtering, antivirus filtering, URL filtering, right? So in this way, we have multiple types of filterings. Like we have more if I say wildfire, DOS protection, etc. all comes under the security profiles. So these are the security profiles that we are going to deal with, and we'll see all the details and the practicals of your filtering. Along with that, again, you can see we have the zone configuration and the protection, right? Packet buffer protection, DOS protection, right? So these all are the major topics that we are going to see. Along with that, we'll see HA configuration. Now we have the HA deployment. So we'll see HA peers, how to configure it, right? For example, let's say if I want to go with the active passive deployment or active type of deployment, we'll see those type of deployments. In that, again, we'll see the split brain type of conditions. So how to avoid the split brain condition inside the HA configuration, each and everything we are going to see practically. Okay. After that, we'll see how to configure role-based access on the firewall. How do you give access or the authorization to the users? So by default, we have super user. We can create admin-based users, or we can create a custom role-based access, right? So depends like which type of user you want to create and what privilege you want to assign it. So it's like a role. You can choose your user-defined role as well, and you can apply it to the users. So all those methods we are going to see. Along with that, we'll see configure and manage certificates, right? Like users, okay, profiles, chains, etc. we are going to see. Now, along with that, we are going to see a dynamic routing protocol configuration. So obviously, when you work with the firewall, you definitely need to know about dynamic routing protocols, right? So if we are working with the layer 3 configuration, so dynamic routing protocols, redistribution, static, path monitoring, policy-based forwarding, virtual routers versus logical router. In Palo Alto firewall, we have a very interesting part. Like we have a virtual router. Now, what is virtual router? So virtual router, you can relate with a kind of a virtual routing table. Okay, it's your Palo Alto firewall does not have a pre-allocated routing table. So you have to create a routing table, and you have to allocate manually those routing table, that particular routing table to your interfaces, right? So we'll show you, the comparisons between what is the virtual router or what are the global routing table etc. compared to other vendors, right? So these are quite interesting things in your Palo Alto syllabus. Now, along with that, NAT configuration, various type of NATs we have. We'll create a NAT policy, right? So different types of NAT policies you can see, like NAT policy rules, security rules related to your NAT, what type of source IP, destination IP would you define, what would be a source NAT, right? What would be the sessions created, how would you verify, how would you check the NAT tool, what is U-turn NAT, check the hit counts of the NAT and verifying whether your NAT is working or not. All these details we are going to see in this configuration. Okay, so along with that, we'll see site-to-site tunnels. In a site-to-site tunnel, again, we have IPsec components to understand. We'll understand the different protocols under the IPsec, like we have ESP, AH. Along with that, we have IK types like IKv1, IKv2, right? Along with that, entire details of IPsec we'll be discussing before completing the site-to-site VPN configuration on your Palo Alto firewall, right? We'll see all those message exchanges like main mode or the aggressive mode, right? We'll see all those message exchanges and the details of your IPsec. Along with that, we'll create a tunnel. We'll test the tunnel. We'll see how to test. We'll talk about generic routing encapsulation, right? GRE protocol. We'll also talk about one-to-one and one-to-many tunnels configuration on our Palo Alto firewall. Now, what are the default service routes? So default service route includes like what are the default services that are allocated to your management interface. So by default, there are various types of services that are by default allocated to your management interface. So let's say, for example, if I want to redistribute those services from the management interface to other data interfaces. So is that possible? Yes, it's possible. So how do we configure it? So how do I configure the services to the individual interfaces, right? All those things you guys can see through the service route configuration. Now that also deals with, let's say, for example, by default, your management interface is responsible for getting updates from the internet, right? And sending the logs from the firewall to the syslog server. So various things are there. So all those things, if you want to distribute to other interfaces, you guys can easily do that. And this is where the service route configuration comes into a picture. Now let's see the other section. Now in the other section, you can see, okay, we have few more topics like QS based, like quality of service. You can see here, we'll see how to utilize the quality of service, right? Policing all our policies and all. So we'll see about the quality of service as well. Now we'll see deploy and configure features and subscriptions. Now from this, you'll see around 70% of tips will come in your examination. Now here you can see, like we have app ID configuration, wherein you can see how to deploy the application control feature inside the firewall. So multiple things are there. Like you can go with the default app ID feature, right? And you can also create the override policy. Or you can say how would you create the custom app, okay? Now let's say, for example, see, using existing app ID, you can create the override policy. Or if you want to create a custom application, you can do that. So this is all about how do you filter the application, sub-application, or you say micro-application, or you can say deep packet inspection, whatever you say. Palo Alto is well known for the application filtering feature. It's one of the best beauty of your Palo Alto firewall. Now, along with that, we can see we have a remote access VPN, right? In a remote access VPN, we can see all about the how would you configure the global protect. That's like a agent, a software. If you compare it with Cisco, it's like a AnyConnect software that you're installing, right, to get a remote access. Same way, how would you install AnyConnect, like Global Protect, and how would you connect to a remote site? Inside that, how would you create a split tunneling? Like split tunneling is more like, let's say you want to secure the particular traffic and you want to exclude the rest of the traffic. Let's say you want to get internet access also, and you want to get the secure access to a tunnel as well. So if you want to do such type of configuration, even we can do that. So when we come to classes, we basically deal with all these topics in a deep way. Along with that, again, we see all the details as I told you earlier, right? We are also going to discuss about the configuration, about the decryption, right? So inbound decryption, what is inbound, SSL forward proxy decryption, exclusions, and SSS proxy and all, user-based agent, those things we have already discussed. Now, other things that we are going to discuss is about the wildfire. So wildfire, for this, we need a subscription. So we'll see how to configure the wildfire, how to integrate it with your firewall, right? And how can we use it in a real time. So these are the major things which were not available earlier, okay? Now, along with that, we'll see transparent configurations as well. Now, we'll see deploy, configure firewalls using Panorama. Now, this is one of the most important part, guys. So let's say, for example, the above configurations, whatever we had seen till now, was directly done through the firewall, not through the manager. Now, this time we are going to use Panorama, and through the Panorama, we'll see how to create a template, right? How to push all the configurations to your firewall. How do you create the relation between the firewall and the devices, right? How would you configure all the configurations, and how do you push to the firewall? All those configurations we are going to see. So along with that, also we are going to see how to configure device groups, how to manage the multiple devices through the Panorama, how do you create a template. These things are going to be seen through the configuration. We'll show these things practically. Along with that, we'll also see how would you manage licensing part, a recovery part, backup part, right? Log collection part. So all these details will be covering in our Panorama part. Along with that, we'll also see how would you manage the log forwarding. Let's say, for example, if I have a separate log server, so how would you integrate that log server? Let's say I have a syslog server, or I have a SNMP server. I have different types of servers, right, with different protocols we have. So if you want to integrate all your servers, then how would you manage it? How would you integrate it? So we'll see live how to integrate all these things. We'll send the log messages. We'll see on the server. We'll verify it, right? We'll also see how to configure device groups, right? So different types of roles and the group management and all we'll see on this particular firewall. Along with that, we are going to see and manage all the HA functionalities. In a HA, we have like link monitoring, path monitoring, HA links, failover, active or active passive, or the HA interface election settings, All these details we are going to see, guys. So this time in a training, we are definitely going to deal with all these topics. Now, let's say if we configure anything and if we have to do our troubleshooting, let's say we configure a VPN, how do we do our troubleshooting? That is also one of the major part, right? So definitely we'll see how to do our troubleshooting with IPsec, GRE, one-to-one or one-to-many, right? Role-based or policy-based, right? Tunnel monitoring, dynamic routing, protocol redistribution, all these troubleshootings, how to do a troubleshooting with the log and the packet captures and all. These details practically we are going to show you guys, okay? And related to NAT security policy, decryption, authentication, monitor, all these things will show you practically for the troubleshooting purpose. That's all for today, guys. See you in the next video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you so much.